What plan should Florida State take to get back to being a big-time college football program? Today on Locked On Seminoles, I'm going to give you my idea of how that should look.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. I'm going to be talking throughout the podcast about one overarching theme, and it has some subpoints to it, but it is the most important topic amongst Florida State athletics. How do the Noles get back to being a big-time program? It's complex to a certain degree, but maybe not as much as you think. There are a couple key points that if they work out, some of the other subpoints could be diverted or even possibly just forgotten about because they will be overwhelmed by the more important points. So I have a handful of bullet points over here on my iPad, and I want to discuss them. But as I go through, I want each and every Florida State fan to think about the following. Do I agree? Do I disagree? Is there a happy medium on these? And above all else, if you do have any comments, especially strong opinions, good or bad, I don't care which, please comment down below the YouTube page. I love to discuss things at earnest about the big box questions in college football, and the Noles are right there in the middle of it. College football is better when Florida State is good. So let's get rid of last season's bad taste in the mouth, and let's start progressing in the right direction. That's what this is about. And I have my own thoughts, and all of this leads to, I know all Florida State fans will agree on this, leaving the ACC sooner than later. I will get to that at the end of the show, but to get to that point, especially earlier, not just leaving, they're eventually going to leave the ACC, that's clear, but to do so earlier, several of these points in some way, shape, or form are going to have to come fruition, preferably starting in the 2025 season. So while I don't necessarily have a specific order here, the one that catches me the most is the one I'm just going to say first. Again, if you disagree with this, fire away. But the overarching theme on this point that I'm going to give is the word respect. Right now, Florida State is not respected, in my opinion, from talking to other colleagues in the recruiting industry, talking to a lot of different people, some even that root for Florida State. They don't necessarily respect it after 2-10. That's a sad reality. But if you come out this season and win at least 8 games, that means you're going to beat all the teams that you should, possibly if you win more than 8, beat a few of the teams that have peer recruiting ability. Clemson, Florida, Miami, Bama. Those 4 teams are different in the recruiting realm than any of the other 8 programs the Florida State Seminoles will play in 2025. And I'm being kind. It's a big difference. Not picking on the other schools, but if Florida State wins 8 or more and they beat at least one of those 4 teams, again, Miami, Florida, Clemson, or Bama, it changes perception. Alabama is obviously the biggest of those 4 from a perception standpoint. Florida State needs respect, though, and that game is game 1. I think it holds a little extra, but I think right now, I was listening to Bud on one of the podcasts he did recently, and he said Bama's somewhere around an 11-point favorite over Florida State, even though it's in Doak Campbell Stadium. That doesn't make me feel like Florida State should be picked to win that game, but it's the first game of the year. You got new staff. You got new guys coming into Alabama staff too. Like, there are a lot of question marks. Quarterback play, etc. But if Florida State could find a way to even be really close in that game, it would go a long way. So I have a 3-year plan, and it really just starts from game 1. They've got to find a way to be very competitive, bare minimum, against Alabama. They need that oomph. It'll help in recruiting. It'll help team chemistry. It'll help the coaching staff. It'll get Norvell a little more respect. Everything would go upwards if a good performance against Bama happened. But again, if they win that game, it could possibly just flip the script in terms of the intensity of practice and how well you do. So winning 8 games would be great. Winning 9 or more would be even better, but got to get to at least 8. And really, they got to win one of those big games where at the end of the year, other people don't just say, well, yeah, you won 8 games, but who did you beat? Who'd you beat? NC State game on the road towards the end of the year is tough, but NC State is not, no offense to them, a pure institution in recruiting. They're not even close. So that brought my thoughts to those 4 schools again: Florida, Miami, Clemson, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. All right. The other points here, this is really scattered, but you can organize them as you see fit. But I'm going to start with one that I harp on a lot here, and a lot of the fans that I communicate with that are Florida State folks, they talk about the same thing. We got to start getting some O-linemen from the high school ranks. I've said this 500 times in the last 2 years, if I've said it once. Doesn't mean it's gone away. They've started it. They're doing better. The 25 group, actually, they finished with some really good players with high ceilings, but they need some technical work, but they have the frame, they have the athleticism. It was a good start. They have a ton of guys lined up for official visits that are offensive linemen. Who will they get? Like if they get Samuel Roseborough, the kid out of Clearwater, I mean, Florida State should be doing jumping jacks. He can play guard, but I think he's going to be a multi-year starter as an offensive tackle at the major P4 level. That's why he has elite programs after it. Can Florida State not only sign a good group of offensive linemen from the high school ranks, can they get 1 or 2 that are truly possible NFL guys down the road because their frames are right, their head is right, the way they approach the game is what I mean by that. And all of the little things that go in with being a lineman, it's different than other spots. It's not talent, it's the grind. Florida State has taken too many kids that didn't want to grind, that had some talent they brought in as offensive linemen. They were gone in a year, 2 years. Wasn't a talent deal. It was just the off the field, wanting to put in the work in the weight room, not staying up to 1:30 in the morning, eating pizza, your diet, whether you're drinking, whether you're chasing girl, all those things. O-line recruiting has went awry just as much off the field as it has in the weight room and on practice or inside a dope camp. They've got to get better at that. And I think personalities, finding the right fits for Florida State, that has been below average, being kind. From 21 and 22 classes in particular, but again, they've started to trend in the right direction. If they can get just 4 linemen this year, but 2 of them are, let's say, upper echelon, national, top 20, top 25, whether it's offensive tackle or interior guys, they'd be in a pretty good spot. But if they could get a couple of guys that are top 10 nationally, and it's possible based on, well, depending on which rankings you want to go with, maybe they could possibly find a way to get somebody that is going to play really early and push that pot. They haven't had that where some of these upperclassmen have really been pushed. When Bowden was here, holy cow, they always had somebody coming up the ranks. And if you weren't ready for practice that day, somebody take your spot. I used to hear about that stuff all the time from Florida State prep. When I talked to people at Florida State, like how practice was, hey, this freshman came in, he's making noise, blah, blah, blah. That is a difference in your program from being good or great. I need to hear that based on who they signed this year. So it's 2 steps. You got to get them first. And then you got to see them actually matriculate up the depth chart because they earned it. Not just because they're the next guy and that's all you got. That's what happened last year. We all know how that went. Got to sign better players that are truly motivated out of the high school ranks on the offensive line. When we come back, got a few other things that I want to talk about before we get into leaving the ACC. That's something that I think is going to happen a little quicker, possibly, than what I originally thought. But if it's really going to happen fast, the next couple of points are key. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in on the game before the tip-off and with live opportunities, player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. Personally, the NBA playoffs, I don't care which team you root for, player props in particular I find intriguing because it makes it simpler. You can look at it from an assist standpoint, maybe using that as a parlay with which team you think is going to cover the spread or not. However you want to do it. I'm a 3-point shooting guy, so somebody hitting a certain number of threes is a possibility, or possibly a point total difference. If you are new to FanDuel, now is the great time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Where would you say is the next most important point for Florida State? I struggled with this, but after just looking at the winning this year, they need some perception to get recruiting rolling, or I would have mentioned recruiting first, but this is kind of putting the cart before the horse by doing that. It's going to be hard this summer. I think they're going to be a little short where I would want them to be, but if they win some this fall, especially again, early in the season, Bama, et cetera, they're going to flip some kids and recruiting's going to get rolling. So those two things go together. But what about afterwards? I kind of look at this different than some other people. When I was growing up, maybe it's just because I'm biased towards that era, the 80s and 90s, Florida State always had guys at quarterback and wide receiver that were just wow players. They made those special moments look, I don't want to say easy, but almost easy. A great throw, a catch that was made that the throw wasn't even good, but you bail out the quarterback. Maybe Charlie Ward avoided a couple of guys, and it was only a 3-yard gain on a scramble, but he should have been sacked for a 7-yard loss, and the Noles should have been punting. 1st and 10. Those guys that made plays that just showed their will, their guts, and their athleticism all combined. The wide receivers and quarterbacks were just a lot of fun to watch. I don't care if it was somebody that was like Snoop Minnis. I'll just use him. Everybody's probably heard of him. Snoop Minnis was a very consistent player on really good Florida State teams. And he dominated because he earned it. He wasn't just talented. He came in and he worked and he got there. So that is what I remember. And to that point, this is why I'm bringing this one up next. Florida State needs its wide receivers and its quarterbacks to take a major step up. Now, Thomas Castellanos, let me just kind of bring this into the light. I have a higher opinion of him than some others, but I've been around him quite a bit. I know Bud Elliott doesn't think that he has any chance of playing at the NFL, but Thomas looks at it differently. And I'm curious how they're going to use him this year to help him not only do well for the Noles, but prepare for some kind of opportunity to at least make a practice squad or do something to get to the NFL as a quarterback. Keyword, quarterback. Until it's proven he's not good enough to do it because he's not accurate enough. Can he take that step? If Florida State is more exciting, if they are more entertaining to watch offensively, again, quarterback and receiver, that kind of it goes what I remember about Florida State when I was growing up. But it's also what excites fans. It's also what excites recruits. It's also what excites the parents of recruits because they're the highlight plays. Every now and then you'll see a run on some kind of sports lead-in or your 5 o'clock news, the sports section. Guy comes on 20 minutes after 5 and he talks about, okay, that's great. You know, they'll have something else, a sack, maybe a pick six or something. Okay. But it's usually the passing game. Florida State needs to move forward by being an exciting football team in addition to winning games. Just grinding it out is not going to get it. And I know a lot of people are worried about Gus just running the ball and all that. They're going to take plenty of shots. I guarantee you. That's what he wants to do. Screens, bombs, reverses, trick plays, roll in the pocket, give the quarterback a two-way go. It will be an exciting offense. But now are they consistent with it? That's a player thing. That is not, I repeat, that is not a coach thing. The coach put you in position. Now you have to execute it. Fans don't like hearing that because it's a lot easier to get rid of coaches than his players. But this is going to be a player situation. Thomas Castellanos has the talent. He has experience. And he's got some pretty good receivers and tight ends to throw to. They're not deep, at least not yet. Landon Thomas is probably an NFL player. Deuce Robinson's probably an NFL player. And Score White is at least a really good college player. That's a good place to start. And then in the backfield, he's got plenty of guys to tote the football to help him be in manageable situations. So when he does throw, he's got a little bit more of an advantage because they're tippy-toeing towards the line expecting the running game. So I think Thomas Castellanos will be better than most think. I'm not saying guarantee going to the NFL or anything like that. But if he's that, again, we get back to that first point, you have a better chance of winning 8, maybe 9 games. And the type of brand that you would be showing would also put Florida State in a better light. It's a win-win. The final piece to that, of course, pass catchers. I'm going to include Landon Thomas as a receiver because the way he catches the ball is not normal. You put an asterisk by Amari because I don't know how much, if at all, they're going to use him. They got some other tight ends. We're just, got transfers, got Biscuit, etc. All that's possible. But Landon Thomas is a difference maker. 6'5-ish, 240, 250. He's got soft hands. I think he's a guy that could be the second or third leading receiver, depending on who's hurt this year at all. But I would imagine he's going to be single covered a lot. And I do not think many middle of the field defenders, meaning strong safety, nickel, or linebacker, I just don't think they're going to cover him very well. If he ends up this year with 40 catches, 600 yards, and 7 touchdowns, would it shock me? No. But they just have to make sure, more importantly, again, because I look at him like a receiver, Landon Thomas cannot be the fourth, the fifth option on plays. They've got to design plays for him to get the ball. So other teams have to roll coverage or have to make really awkward and difficult and uncomfortable decisions about who's got to cover somebody that's 6'5" and over 240 pounds, but yet is athletic as all get out. That is exciting too. Seeing a tight end run over somebody going down the field after making a tough catch, yeah, that'll make your highlight reel too. That will help Florida State. That will help them get back into being a dominant program. It's a long process. I think it's going to take 3 years minimum for Florida State to get where they need. The roster is nowhere near where it needs to be, but Thomas is one of those guys that could have played at Florida State at any time and been a dominant player. He is that kind of guy. So adding him to Deuce, adding him to Squirrel, and then I don't know which one of the young receivers will stand up and be that guy. Maybe it's a collection that it takes to get to that point. But some of those guys are going to be forced into action, and we might see even a few smaller amounts of it, but we'll see a little bit more of 22 personnel, et cetera. They've got more tight ends this year. They'll use the receivers in a different manner if it doesn't work out. So I just hope that the guys that do play, they're exciting, because that's really important for Florida State football this year. If it's not, it's not going to work that well. Now, the next one is just talking about the defense. Florida State signed some pretty good defensive talent over the last few classes. D-line in particular, you got the big fella coming in from Georgia. He's as good a nose guard as there is in the country. You've signed a few big-time DBs, et cetera. But they, especially at linebacker, they've got to step it up. They've got to get the elite kid. Let me give you an example. Chauncey Kennan is going to make his decision. I believe it's like July 5th, something like that. He's the corner out of Booker High School, grew up a Noles fan, has ties to Florida State. But Georgia and Florida State are kind of like teeter-totter. He mentions Georgia first quite a bit during interviews, etc. Why? Because they're winning. So you're not going to be able to get him on campus after Florida State plays again before he makes a decision. Again, this is the cart and the horse. It is what it is. They still have to find a way, regardless of who he picks right now, to get him to sign in December. Defensive players like him, change your game plan. You can run cover one. You can't do nothing about it. We're putting an extra guy in the box. Screw you. You can't do anything about it. They've got to get more of those guys. Somebody like that at corner, then you add one more big-time linebacker per year, and Florida State's defense changes automatically. Just on that. Adding another defensive lineman per year would be great. But they haven't recruited it bad. They just need to be a little more consistent on the edge. The big guys have done a pretty good job, to be honest with you. Defensive end needs to step up. They can't be losing kids to Syracuse, et cetera. That's a problem, but they've got to do that. Last point here, I talked about this a little bit with wide receiver and quarterback, but the performance, the perception, they can't have any games where they get smacked around. They can't have any games where it's just awkward for the TV commentators to discuss, hey, Florida State doesn't look the part right now. There's something wrong. That reverberates in the ears of recruits because coaches for other teams are going to tell them about it. That's also going to be on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, text messages, YouTube. All those are bad. If they lose any games this year, they have to be competitive. Period. No more getting smacked around. No more just lethargic effort on either side of the ball. That has to go away. When we come back, I'm going to talk about how all of this, and one more thing, are going to help Florida State leave the ACC earlier. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. All right. This is the last piece before I get into what they have to do to leave the ACC early. And this is a housekeeping thing as much as anything else. And it's the big box, awkward, legal jargon that I hate with every fiber of my being, but it's just the bottom line. The Florida State administration, meaning the AD, the president, board of trustees, the coaching staff, Mike Norvell, everybody have got to get on the same page. Moving forward with not only what's best for the school long term, but what's best for the next 2 to 3 years. And those two things can be vastly different, especially let's be honest, Norvell, I don't know if you call it the hot seat because of how big his contract is, but he's not in good favor right now at Florida State. So this will be tricky. I know he gave back part of his salary. He's doing different things, and that's all great. If people do not believe inside the administration that Mike's going to be around, quote unquote, long term, meaning 4 years from now or longer, it's a no-go. You're not going to convince recruits, boosters, advertisers, and just people to come to Doak in general unless they believe. So, with that in mind, keep in mind that Florida State is still a big brand, and you can still sign a lot of deals. You can do a lot of different things, but they've got to put Mike in a better situation this year, no matter how the games are going. Like, his press conferences were so consistently bad last year. He was so uncomfortable in front of the microphone. That's got to go away. They got to work with him or do something. He looked awkward. And even this spring a little bit, there was some of it. He was better, but he has to have a better positive light. And I don't know what it is with him. Like, he's a nice guy by all means. There has to be better perception. There have to be people believing in him. I don't know if he knows it's that way, but I'm not the only one that thinks that in the media. Trust me on that. And he needs to show that for his players and everything else. So the boosters believe their NIL's got to take up like where it's at now. It's above average, but it still needs to take a major leap up to help what I would personally, again, call a 3-year plan for Florida State to win big. It's nowhere near where it needs to be. I know that probably makes a lot of people angry because they've donated. And what I'm talking about here is it's great if you give 50, 100, whatever it is. Florida State needs a mega donor of some kind or some collection of, let's say, level 2 donors to jump in. And one of the biggest ways for that to happen is for people to believe in the head coach. They're not going to believe in something when, quote unquote, the CEO is somebody they don't believe in. Why would you? Ironically, and not surprisingly, at the same time, this is kind of like the investors you think of with the stock market. Really is. Florida State needs those boosters to help, not just with Doak Campbell Stadium or helping with a little NIL with one of the players. Big box money donations. And I'm talking 7-figure donations. Again, there's nothing wrong with the guy that donates $100 a year, the gal, whatever. That's great. They don't have the elite donors. From what I'm told, the way some other schools do, Miami in particular, the Bull Gator Club at UF, LSU, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, some of them, they're different in what they've done. Now, I'm not saying Florida State can't do that in an isolated situation. I'm just going by what info I've been passed along. But again, even if you have those available, will they do it in the moment if they don't believe in the head coach? That's why I brought up Mike first. There was no coincidence. Does the admin believe in him? Because if they don't, they're not going to be able to sell him. And if they can't sell him, he's not going to really recruit the way he wants because he'll know you're not going to be able to lie to a guy like that. You'll have one foot out the door. This season is really about the next 5 seasons for Florida State. The next 8. If you're sliding slowly to that point where everybody knows Mike Norvell is going to be out the door after this year or the next, recruiting will suffer. And whichever coach you get, which may not be the one you want either because of recruiting, it's not going to get any better. Cannot stress it enough. The administration and everybody got to be on the same page to push the message that Florida State football is headed in the right direction. It may take a little while. I get that. Anybody that doesn't want to hear it, that's too bad. They're not going to be great this year. They should be good. Can they get to 8, 9 wins? Again, I keep coming back to that. And that would be a starting point. But the donations got to go up. That'll help NIL. That'll help player morale. That'll help recruiting. And then eventually, yes, with all of the things lining up together, that strengthens your cause whenever you want to try to buy out of the ridiculous grant of rights situation. The big money 7-figure boosters, they're more likely to help you buy their allegiance to freedom, maybe being independent for a year or two. Maybe it's going directly to another. I have no idea. I'll let the powers that be figure that out. But you're not going to do it unless people start believing in Norvell. And his contract, from everything I've heard, Bud Elliott talking about it and other people a lot closer to it than I am, they don't think he's going anywhere after this year, barring something just completely collapsing. That's unfortunate, but that's the reality of Florida State football. They have a long way to go, and it all starts with Mike Norvell. I'm not saying he's the guy because I called for his head. If it was a normal situation, he'd have been fired. I have no doubt about it. And if you still think he should be fired, that's fine. This is a financial deal. But while he's your coach, you've got to support him with every fiber of your being. That includes the financial end with the boosters. They got to figure out how to do it. I'm not saying I understand how to do that, because my guess is a lot of the people on the board of trustees, president's office, etc., I'm guessing a lot of them probably don't believe in him the way they would like to. But can you blame them? They won 2 games last year. Very awkward situation, and one that's still important. If they don't get that figured out, I remember Gene Williams talking about this on War Chant. Hey, after 26, it's a possibility Florida State could walk away from the ACC. And from a financial situation, it's possible. But do you think the people you really, and I mean really need to step up would do that? And I mean, they're probably going to have to finance part of it anyway, just to buy out of that. That's awkward to begin with. But it's worse if some of the boosters don't want to write those 7-figure checks. There's just no shortcut. It is straight up cash. Otherwise, it could be closer to 2030. I don't think any Florida State fan wants to see the ACC in 28, 29, etc. I don't want to cover it either. So one way or the other, Florida State has to figure it out with Norvell at the helm, at least for the next few years, full throttle, everything. Financially to support players, financially to support NIL to get players, transfer portal, all that. It will be a task. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you coming in and checking out all things Florida State football. It's a lot of fun for me. Please subscribe. Please like. Please share your comments down below. I love it when that happens. It's a lot of fun to get discussion started. Thank you very much, and we will see you again soon here on Locked On Seminoles.